So this evening we have got Patrick Armstrong with us, fantastic author with a debut novel who is going to be talking at the Blandford Literary Festival. John, hello. Thank you for coming today.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
That's all right. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into your novel.
Oh, that's an interesting question to start with. I'm currently working in a school as a teacher. I lived in Taiwan for 12 years, from 2010 to 2022, and that is where most of my novel got written. Um, Lived in Korea for a year as well.
Gosh.
I did all my studies up in Glasgow. I did a master's and PhD up there. So I've been about a bit, so to speak.
Yeah.
I was
How's
also going back into before my academic career, I was a hairdresser and a barber.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I've
What
had
do you prefer?
several lives. Sorry.
What do you prefer, teaching or barbering or
Well, actually, that's a
traveling?
good question. It has crossed my mind a couple of times on the darker days of teaching to go
Yeah.
back to barbering. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, the barbering's long gone now. But
Yeah.
I kind of miss it. I miss the kind of physicality of barbering.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But still rewarding, isn't it, working with children? I know you have dark days with kids, but ultimately you're
Yeah, I
there
mean, I'm in
for a
secondary
passion.
school. Yeah,
Mm,
it's secondary school now. So I did work in universities, and then I changed to secondary schools, and
mm,
it's challenging. It's
yeah,
challenging, but that,
yeah,
like you say, when you get a good day, it's brilliant.
yeah, yeah, fantastic. Well, your debut novel was Lyttleton Siren, isn't it?
Yes,
Now,
yes,
that's an unusual book, isn't it? Because you've set it with three perspectives,
yes.
three different characters. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, it actually started out as it's a strange one. It had been in my head for a very long time.
Mm,
It's kind of loosely based on several different incidents I heard about as kid when I was a kid, and it's never really sort of left my consciousness. It's been
mm,
going around in there for years and years, and so I sort of wrote a little sort of story based on a guy who'd done made a terrible mistake and been involved in an accident. And then at first it was a two-hander. It was the character of Melvin, and a 14-year-old boy who was like kind of witness.
mm,
And it's sort of the story of the town at the time because I wanted it to include the Falklands War.
mm.
But then when I finished I'm going to talk about this a little bit on Saturday.
Yeah.
When I'd finished the first draft and I'd sent it to an editor, um, I kind of I always felt it was a little bit thin, and I started writing another book, and then I went back to it, and it sort of dawned on me that what I needed was this female voice. So I
Mm,
had to sort of generate a female who's basically the bereaved mother in the story. And
mm.
once I had that kind of triptych in place, straight away, as soon as I'd done the first chapter of the female character and slipped it in between the two, um, straight away the book started to feel so much more full and
Yeah.
emotionally full as well.
Yeah.
And so I just went straight ahead with that. And
Yeah.
she actually became, I think, I don't know, she actually became my favorite character in the
Yeah.
novel.
How challenging was that then to have obviously two male characters
Mm,
to then have, like you say, to bring that emotional element into it? How difficult was
mm.
that for you to write?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because you're always slightly worried about authenticity. The new
Mm,
book I'm writing has got a female voice in it as well, and the new book's actually got a foreign female voice in it. So I'm
mm,
having to be very careful and really try and achieve authenticity. But it was actually a pleasure. I loved it. I
mm.
loved it because because you're right. My characters speak in first person,
Yeah.
so I once and I write at between 5 and 7 in the morning, and
Mm.
so pretty much every day before work, I was sort of almost having to sort of get into character
Yeah.
of this sort of grieving mother
Mm.
every morning, sort of between the hours of 5 to 7. So it was incredibly draining and exhausting and intense,
Yeah.
but very exciting as well because it was almost like acting. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But without any sort of audience there
Yeah.
other than my computer screen.
Yeah.
Um, but it was very rewarding, and I enjoyed it. And I think I wouldn't necessarily. I've noticed with my next book, it's kind of third person and first person.
Mm.
Um, Switching between three different perspectives, and changing genders was quite, quite difficult, quite
Yeah.
taxing.
Yeah, I'd imagine it is. I imagine it is.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you talked about the Falkland Wars being in it. So obviously it's
Yeah.
set in the 80s. Was
Yeah.
there any real reason for the 80s? Or was it something, like you said, going back to what you remembered as a kid?
Yeah, lots of reasons really. That basic reason, because I think, I think I had a bit of a charmed life. I had a very nice childhood in a little town that was kind of my world as a
Mm.
youngster. And I think the 80s, um, I don't want to be generalized, but kids were quite had a lot more freedom in the 80s.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
12 years old, we were a bit feral, if I'm
Yeah.
honest. We just
Yeah.
kind of roamed around, got into all sorts of trouble and experimented with all sorts of things.
Mm.
And I kind of and that so that period in my life, as a sort of 12 to 15-year-old is very vivid.
Mm.
And then as I got older, you sort of, even by the time I'd left that little village, the veneer of the sort of the perfection and the veneer of the place had started to wear off a little. And you were
Yeah.
just that little bit older and you could see the kind of fault lines beneath the surface, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then looking back as an adult, you really see them. You
Yeah.
really see that, it had its strange characters, it had its real problems and that kind of thing. So it was a fascinating time to go back to. And there's also the wonderful thing about setting, like I've got a book, my next book, I'm going to go back to 76 and a heat
Oh,
wave of 76.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's something about that time that really appeals to me. And plus it's pre-smartphones, so everything's a bit more mysterious, I find.
Yeah.
People can't just text their mothers and things,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
bit there's a bit more danger.
Yeah, it happens in the moment, doesn't it? Because
Yes,
you have to
yeah,
deal with it in the moment. I mean, that
yeah.
answers one of the questions I was going to ask. Would your story transcend to another era? But for the reason you've just said, probably not, because
Yeah.
you couldn't do it maybe nowadays because, like you say, you've got the technology that people would use, which you
I
wouldn't
think so,
imagine
yeah,
now.
because there's even a little storyline where two kids kind of do that classic, I call it in the book the classic kid con, where they sleep out for the night and one tells his mum he's sleeping at one's house and one tells his mum he's sleeping at the other. And of
Yeah.
course that just wouldn't work these days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There, yeah, because there'll be a post on social medias about
Of
them,
course they
whatever it is
would,
that they're
yeah. And they'd be
doing.
texting every 5 minutes to check they're all right. Don't get me started. Don't get me started on smartphones. Year or
They
night.
have their uses, but they also have their
They're
problems
great.
as
They're
well.
great. But I do have again, I mentioned it in my talk. I do have a sort of, I mean, I don't think they've stolen childhood, but they've
Mm.
certainly stolen elements of it.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree.
Yeah.
Well, with that in mind, obviously you said you're a teacher. Um, do you obviously use your writing or encourage young writers if you come across them within your day-to-day work?
Yeah, unfortunately, you don't come across that many.
No.
But just today, actually, every fortnightly on Wednesdays, I do a little extracurricular creative writing club at lunchtimes.
Mm.
And at the moment, well, we had four there today, but
Mm.
they're four very keen students, and they're doing poetry and short stories. And one of them, I think, is actually really quite talented.
Mm.
He's produced some really quite impressive work, especially for when I think that he's 16. I
Yeah,
hadn't written anything at 16.
yeah.
I mean, even at 18, the idea of writing was a pipe dream for me. It didn't really become something I considered seriously until I read The Wasp Factory when I was about 20.
That's an interesting book.
Yes.
Ian Banks, isn't it? Ian Banks.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
Fast
That was the
Factory.
book that really turned me back onto reading and to the idea of writing. But
Yeah,
even then, it was still just a pipe dream of like, God, I would love to be able to write something like that. And
yeah.
so then that sort of started the ball rolling with, well, how do I how do I go about that?
So, well, how did you go about that? What point did you go, you know what, this really is a good book that I've read. I would love to write like this. So what happened next? How long before you actually picked
Well,
up?
to be honest, like I say, it stayed a bit of a pipe dream for quite a long time because I just didn't know how to do it, and I hadn't read
Mm.
enough or practiced enough writing. And it wasn't until I went to university.
mm,
I sort of packed in hairdressing in my mid-20s, went to university,
mm,
and obviously there you're exposed to so much more writing and so much
mm,
more of your own writing. You start to
mm,
write about books and stuff because I did English literature,
yeah.
and then while I was doing my PhD thesis on an American poet, to sort of to sort of relieve me from the grind of doing that, I
Mm,
started this book on the side,
mm.
funnily enough, about a depressed barber who was trying to have himself killed. which which I still would like to go back to. Actually, I still
Yeah.
think there's some really good material there because it was as bleak as it sounds. It was a sort of very black comedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was drawing on both the things I was seeing in Glasgow and my years of being a barber,
Mm,
and so yeah, and I think, but the PhD, although it was very very difficult, it because you write a sort of 80,000 word thesis, it gives you the confidence to make you think, well, actually, yeah, I can write something that's 80,000 words that holds together.
yeah. Yeah.
And that in itself, the ability to, just see the seeing of a bulk of writing, I
Mm,
think. And
mm.
when, I mean, I'd never be as presumptuous to give anyone advice, but if anyone does ever say and he asks me, I'm always say, well, just, you know, don't stop writing. Do you know that? I
Mm.
mean, one of the hardest things I think about writing is sitting down and writing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
getting yourself
definitely.
in front of that place 2 hours, 1 hour a day, even if it's
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to sit down and do it. And once you've cracked that and got into the routine of doing that,
Mm.
and the PhD made me do that, I had to
Yeah.
sit in front of a computer and write.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, that is, you're obviously very dedicated. You get up a couple of hours before, a normal
Yeah.
time to
I
write
try
and do
to.
the
Yeah, I
work.
try to.
Yeah, yeah. And it's the discipline of it, isn't it? So
It is. I mean, and funnily enough, that's a word I, sort of tell myself when I'm sort of scratching my head at 5 in the morning, thinking, what am I doing? Just think, come on, this is the discipline. And there's something to be said for that. I think what I love about it is when you're producing something or you're editing, those, even if you just do 300 words,
yeah,
then the next day it's 600. And by the end of the week, it's 1,800, and by the
absolutely.
end of the month, it's 6,000. And it's
Yeah.
like, and that's how it goes forward.
Yeah, funny enough, I mean, we're in November at the moment. I don't know if you've ever heard of NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, where the
No.
target is to do 50,000.
NaNoWriMo.
Yeah,
No,
it's
I've
to do
never heard of that.
50,000 words
Right.
throughout the month by the 30th of November.
In
I've done
one
it,
month.
yeah, in one month. I've done it a couple of times, and it is
Right.
really, like you say, disciplined. It's about sitting down. And I used to do it the other end of the day. I used to do it late
Yeah.
in the night.
Were you
Um,
screenwriting or novel writing?
this was novel writing that I was
Right.
doing, not
Yeah.
screenwriting. But yeah, it was brilliant. As you said, just chunks. Like maybe on a Wednesday, I was so tired, I maybe only did 300 words. But by the
Mm,
time the weekend came, I would
mm,
catch up, with
mm,
my sort of daily word count. So
yeah.
it is a discipline to do, but not to beat
Mm,
yourself up if maybe you don't hit as many words as you wanted to.
yeah.
It's
Yeah. I think just,
it's the
yeah.
sitting down and doing, I think, is the biggest one to break rather than putting the word count in.
I think it is. Yeah. I think that's the hardest thing,
Mm,
because I think having the ideas is the sort of fun part.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
the grinding them out
yeah,
and also being prepared to sit there and write something because often 50% of the stuff you're writing is probably not going to end up in your book,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you've got to write that sort of 100% of it to have the decent
yeah,
percentage that's there, and
yeah,
then strip away the stuff that's not
yeah,
necessarily up to scratch.
yeah.
But
Actually,
and then the nice thing is now I actually enjoy it. At
mm,
first, when I first sat down to write my first novel, which is still stuffed in a drawer, the Barber novel, it was, the first 10,000 words were absolutely painful,
mm,
because I
mm,
could tell as I was writing that it was awful,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, but you just
Oh,
think if I keep going, and then you get the odd paragraph or page that you thought, oh, I quite like that. That's actually
yeah,
not, you
yeah.
know. So
And
you
it's to
just, and
cling on
that
to
gives you
them,
the
really, isn't it?
incentive. Yeah.
Yeah, cling on to those good paragraphs and those good pages. And like you say, you've put it in a drawer, but there's material there that you could go
Mm,
back and revisit at a later
could do.
date,
Yeah. I've
even
always
to
thought it would
create a
make a
short
nice,
story.
yeah. I've
Um,
always thought it would make a nice kind of knockabout kind of dark kind of Netflix caper. I've often,
yeah,
because I'm very intrigued in the idea of adaptation to from, um, novel to script. I know you're a screenwriter, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
currently turning. I've got one episode of Lyttleton Siren kind of roughly completed in final draft,
yeah, yeah.
but it's an incredibly different. It's such a different kind of writing,
It
isn't it?
is.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I agree. I agree. But you've talked about your next book. In fact, you've talked about your next book and your next book. So
yeah.
just give us a little bit of an overview. Whereabouts are you in that?
The
And
next book,
yeah,
next book's finished actually. Next book's
completely
finished.
finished. Yeah.
Well, finished as in, it hasn't been through the professional sort of
Yeah.
process of editing
Yeah.
yet. I've done several edits. I've had a couple of people read it. I've done a restructure and it's gone back to my wife now, who's my first and trusted reader.
Mm,
So she's doing a read through at the moment. And this one's completely different,
yeah.
completely different. It's post-apocalyptic.
Hmm.
It's set in a kind of fictitious version of a sort of little coastal village in Dorset that I know quite well. And the idea is, it sort of came to my mind when I was living in Taiwan of, this was actually before COVID,
Mm,
of, what would happen if a guy ended up in this beautiful place, but it was completely desolated, desolate
mm,
from some sort of thing that's wiped out most of humanity. And then while he's there, there's also a sort of a villain involved. There's a sect who have survived
mm,
who are pretty dangerous, and there's a woman who washes up who's a kind of refugee.
mm.
Because when I was first coming up with the idea, the refugee crisis was really getting going on the television
Yeah.
and on the news all the time. So that kind of crept in there.
Yeah.
So he kind of loses his family, but then uh, makes a companion through this woman.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Talking
have you
about it
come?
now, it sounds a bit sort of far-fetched, but it
No,
but
no,
but
but
it
the
works.
beauty of fiction is
Yeah,
that doesn't matter, does it?
no, no.
It's just drawing that reader in. Do you have a title at all, or do you not worry about a title until you've got all the
Yeah,
extras?
no, I've got a working title. It's called Sound of the Sea because
Hmm.
that's something that keeps coming up again and again. And the house that he finds himself in when he first kind of because him and his wife and his family sort of try and make a run for it from the interior of the country to
Yeah.
this idyllic coastal place where they're hoping to sort of, just about survive.
Mm.
And the house they end up in, which is desolate, is called Sound of the Sea. It's like an old derelict house.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that idea of the sound of the sea, and in a positive and negative kind of way,
Yeah.
because of obviously the immigrant experience who has to have to cross the channel,
Yeah.
that becomes quite a feature of the novel.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
little bit, I would say it's more of, it's pushing the boundaries a little bit further than my first novel. I always think it's good to kind of push yourself a bit, go
Yeah.
that little bit deeper. I
Yeah.
was watching an interview with David Bowie the other day, and I get quite a lot of inspiration from watching people like that talk
Yeah.
about their work. And
Mm.
he said this thing about how, when you go out, when you walk out into the sea and you feel your feet just about not quite touching the floor,
Mm.
he said that's when you know you're doing something right.
Mm.
When you're there in this sort of zone where you think, oh, this is quite difficult. I
Yeah.
don't really know what I'm doing here. But, rather than doing the same thing over and over again,
Yeah.
I'd like to sort of test myself a little
Yeah.
bit.
I think that's brilliant because it gives you a chance to just expand your
Mm.
creativity. Like you said, it's moving forward. Like you
Mm.
could just do another novel, very similar,
Yeah, I
same
mean,
vein,
I mean,
but you
there's
haven't.
and the booksellers want genre, don't they? And
Yeah.
it kind of depresses me a bit. I mean, I was in a bookshop today, kind of trying to sell my novel to, trying to see if they would stop my novel. And you look on the shelves, and I've got nothing against these writers who do, 10, but you pick them up, and they look like to me, and you read the blurb on the back that they're kind of the same novel over and over
Mm,
again.
mm,
And I
mm.
kind of that doesn't really interest me, if I'm
Yeah.
honest.
No,
I
but
mean,
that's good.
the financial security would be lovely, but the big deal.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it must get a bit tiring doing that same sort of story over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree. Well, let's talk about Saturday because it's coming up
Yes,
thick and fast.
it
So
is. It
Saturday,
is.
15th of November, you are 11:30 till 12:30, and
I
it's
am indeed.
Souls of Siren, and it's about writing multiple voices in fiction, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if anybody wants to come along, obviously they can get tickets through Eventbrite through the website, or they can pay on the door should they want to.
Lovely.
There will be someone
That'd be
there to
perfect.
take that. And I take it, John, you're going to have some books with you, aren't you? So you can
I
sign
will have
them and
some
chat.
books because I believe I'm right in thinking there's a little book fair downstairs. Is
There
that right?
is, yeah,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
I'll be on that in the morning, and then I don't know who I'm drafting in. Probably either my wife or my mum, wife and son, to take over while I'm upstairs doing the talk. But
Brilliant.
yeah, the talk's going to just drop in on each of the three characters, talk a little bit about the genesis of the book, a little bit
Mm,
about writing itself and why I think it's so important,
yeah.
and hopefully should be a kind of good sort of I don't know, nice conversation piece to go with the book.
Yeah. Are you going to do any reading, little excerpts from it
I
at
am,
all?
yeah. I'm going to read from the start of each character just to give the audience a taster of
Fabulous. That's fantastic.
without spoilers. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, that's brilliant. Well, just again, it's Saturday, 15th November, 11:30 till 12:30, and that is at the Blandford Corn Exchange.
looking
And
forward to it.
obviously, then come and see you, come and have a chat with you, and
Yeah,
on your stall, come and see
I
your
mean it's great,
books.
isn't it? It's great that you're in that beautiful building. What a
Oh,
fabulous place.
it
Yeah,
really is. Centre of
yeah.
town. We couldn't wish for a better venue. Really
No,
looking
it's
forward to it. And
fabulous.
I think we're the first event to be held there since it's been refurbished because it's been
I
closed
think
for
you
such a
are.
long
I
time.
think you are.
Yeah.
You're like George Michael when he did Wembley. That he did Wembley just after it had been done up.
Ah,
So
well,
there you
let's
go.
hope people
You're in
love.
very good company.
Oh, see, there you go. There you go. Well, John, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. It's been
Thank you. I really
fascinating to
enjoyed
find
it.
out. Yeah, it's been great to find out the reasonings and the processes behind your writing. It's been brilliant. So, and
Great
we will
stuff.
see you on Saturday.
See you Saturday.
All right then. Thanks so much.
Thanks a
Bye.
lot. Bye bye.